Welcome to the FitLab 253. This is our second video and we will be going through a beginning mat class. You've learned the foundations, now we're going to put it to work. So we always start with a little bit of a spinal warm-up. So this is Nicole, she's going to be assisting today. I'm Leanne. We're going to start with our arms long by her side. We'll go quickly through the fundamentals. I'll walk you through it as we put it into what a mat class would look like, and then we'll start with some of the workout moves. So she's going to have her feet about hip width apart, parallel. And again, how we know that is if it's a fist of space, if I place it between her knees and feet, that's about what it is. She's going to keep the shoulders relaxed. She'll start with a deep breath. Remember, we talked about that intercostal breath. As she exhales, her ribs draw together and shift down towards her hips. She's inhaling through her nose and exhaling out her mouth. She's going to take one more deep breath, really working on that lateral expansion. And this time as she exhales, we're going into that pelvic tuck. So remember, we talked about tucking. It's where we flatten that uphill ramp. And then I'm going to let her arch her back today and just dip it down so she creates this lovely space under her back. Now she's going to tuck and flatten, uphill ramp, and now she's going to go the other way into a downhill ramp. And then she's going to find neutral, our flat position. I'm going to have her now just find her fingers sliding up so that her shoulders come up to her ears. Elevation, remember, and then depression is where we stretch the fingers to the heels. And again, she elevates the shoulders, and then she's going to stretch them long. That long position is where we want them with her scapula flat into the floor. And then the little head nods we went over, she's going to drop her chin down to her chest, and then really far back like she's looking behind her. And then she's going to draw it down to her chest and then find that in between. So there's her neutral neck position. Our first exercise is the pelvic curl. It's meant to warm up the spine. So she's going to start by what we call an imprint. An imprint is where you go into that pelvic tuck. She's going to peel her vertebrae off the mat one segment at a time. So she's starting from her low back. She'll start to lift up vertebrae by vertebrae. Once she gets here at the top, she keeps her knees hip width apart, and our goal is to get a line from her shoulder to her knee. What makes this work is her hamstring. She'll now reverse that articulation. Her chest drops, her ribs drop, her waist, and then she finds neutral at the bottom here. She's going to exhale as she goes to the top. Once she hits the top here, she inhales for a pause, and then on the exhale, she articulates down, keeping the triceps pressing down into the mat, and then finding neutral at the bottom. And again, she rolls to the top. So muscles that we're working as she's doing this, we're working the hamstrings, and we're also working the core. It's stabilizing. And we want a little bit of a stretch on the hip flexors. She's going to do one more like this, exhale. And you can see the arms are active. She's pushing them into the floor even as she comes down, which keeps the shoulders from rounding forward. And then she'll come into that neutral position. The next exercise we're going to do is called single leg lift. It's meant to teach how do I move my leg without my whole body getting involved. She's going to bring this leg to tabletop. So tabletop, reminder, 90-degree angle. We look like we could have a glass of wine sitting on here. So knee is over hip joint. She's not into her hip joint, and she's not too far away, because what that causes is for us to tuck or arch. Once she establishes this, hip joints are east to west. She has not one side higher than the other. She's going to contract her core like how we learned how to feel the low abs sink in, and then she's going to hinge down and exhale as she hinges back up. Inhale down, exhale up. So muscle focus on this is abdominals. What we think about is she's pulling in, and this will not move as the leg moves back and forth. So she's learning, how do I stabilize my trunk while my limbs can start to move around? So as we get into harder exercises and the legs are way out here, she knows how to stabilize her torso. And we'll switch to the other side. She's going to bring that foot down. She brings the other one up. And then she taps, exhaling on the down, inhaling. You can see right here the angle of her knee doesn't change. She keeps a 90-degree angle. She's not stretching the leg out or pulling it back in. Goal is to try to press the arms firmly down so that the shoulders stay broad and open. She's going to stay here. We're going to make it a little bit harder with what's called leg changes. If you're not ready for that, just stick with single leg lift. Leg changes, she alternates in midair. So she switches and taps, switches and taps. So they don't wait for each other at the top. they're constantly moving. We want to try to make sure to stop at a 90-degree angle and then toes barely touch the floor. If you start feeling I'm going to have her do it wrong and she's going to arch her back, you're going to see that it looks like now her ribs are popping up and she's gapping. Then she feels her back. So she needs to keep her core in, her waistband cinched up, and she's hinging. Exhale. Now, if this is too much, I'm going to have her show a modified version. She's only going to go halfway down. So she barely goes, and then she switches. So you don't have to go all the way down to the floor. You can just do mild range here, or just again, stick with that first version. One more here, and then she'll bring both feet down. Next exercise is called chest lift. I'm going to have her interlace her hands like so and put them behind her head. So in Pilates, we do a true interlace position. The reason behind that, again, is the support of the head. If we're like this, it doesn't really do anything for support. All it does is put weight back here. We're making a hammock, and it should go right around the occipital lobe. We know where that is it's right where that natural divot of her head is, where in her neck she can feel that little teardrop position. So I'm going to have her start with just this little micro hover. She's going to lift her head an inch off the mat and stay looking up to the ceiling. So a way that I test is she using her hands is I'm going to let her just kind of stay heavy with her head, feel it feels like a hammock, and then she's going to come back down. So we call it just a head hammock where she lifts and pauses. She kind of drops her head back a little bit, feels that it's weighted fully, and then she'll come back down. So that way we know we're not going like this and turtling to come up, but the chest is what's flexing her forward. Yep. Now on the next one, I'm going to have her first recruit her low abs like we talked about. Then she's going to feel that head hammock, and then she's going to continue that movement into a C-shaped position. This is in Pilates what we call C-curve. She'll pause here and then lower it back down. So breath pattern, we inhale to prepare. Exhale as you curl up. She'll pause for an inhale, and then exhale, lower it back down. So we stabilize first, then we move with the abdominals. I'm going to have her hold this position. One way I can check to see if she's in the right position, if I bring my arm back here, I want her head like this. It creates this natural C shape of the spine to my arm, so I can tell her head looks great right there, and then she's going to come back down. Early in our foundations, we talked about fists between chin and chest. So the space she has there does not change. She's not dropping it down or extending it back. It stays absolutely the same. I'll have her do a bad one here. I'm going to show you what it looks like where if she leads with her neck, she's going to push it and protrude it forward. You can see it's not real great on the neck muscles, and come back down. And I'll show you another one where she looks up to the ceiling, which is not real great. This is old school where people used to do that. And it's probably worse to do it like that than correct. So this is called chest lift. It's meant to work the abdominal muscles. She's feeling that. And the stabilizers. Okay, we're going to move on to what's called chest lift with rotation. This is where we add rotation to this exercise. I'm going to teach it in a modified way, and then we'll show you how to do it a little bit harder. I'm going to have her place her hands one on top of each other. And we talked about elevation and depression, right? So she's going to depress her shoulders, and I'm going to have her have them right about here. Now, I can tell if they're depressed. If I have her push down on me right now, I can feel her shoulders slide down her back. That's her lats kicking in. We want that working. She's going to curl up and reach for me. Okay, and her head and neck and shoulders are in place. Now she's going to make a straight line with her fingers over to my side here, and we want to try to keep them the same level. Then she'll come to center. Now she's going to come to here and to center. So this is a tester to make sure, where are we moving from? She's moving from her upper torso. It's not her arms doing the movement, it's her chest. So once she feels this, she's feeling her obliques. Breath pattern is going to be inhale, center, exhale, rotate. Inhale, center, exhale, rotate. I'll have her come center and lower down. So very small movement, as you can see, and we're stopping and pausing in the middle. When we pause in the middle, she's not coming down and up. We stay up. Once we're up, we're up. We're going to show it with the hands interlaced behind the head a little bit harder. She's going to exhale, curl up, inhale, pause, and then she exhales and rotates. Same exact theory. So she's going to try to replicate what she felt. Pass through center, exhale as she rotates, inhale. Hard part now is we've got these extremities back here, and a lot of the time, I'll have her show a bad one, is we like to go like this and do an arm action, and we start pulling like the sprinkler. So she's gonna keep her elbows always wide and open, and her head is always part of her spine. So wherever your spine moves, your head moves, and lower down and rest. So that is chest lift with rotation. So we learned the pelvic curl so far, how to stabilize when we're laying flat, and then we did a little bit of chest lift and chest lift with rotation. This next exercise, I'm going to show it modified and then a harder version. She's going to bring her arms out to a T with her palms up. Her arms can rest on the machine. Normally she'll have the mat or floor here, so it's a little different when you're up on the machine. You don't really have something to rest on. Why we put the palms up, it's so that we don't use the arms to push down and stabilize ourselves. And I want to keep the shoulders broad and open. She's going to leave her feet on the floor and just point them. So I'll have her go to tippy toes. From here, the goal of this is the knees should stay the exact same length at all time. The exercise comes from the waist. It's an oblique exercise. We're thinking about like a doorknob turning and coming back. So her waist is like the doorknob. Her hip will lift up on one side, just like so. And then she uses the oblique to pull back to center. And then she rocks to this side. Her knees stay the same length, so this hip has to come up and off. Shoulders don't leave the mat, and now she uses this oblique to come back to center. The hard part is trying to keep the upper ribs down and shoulders down while the waist turns. So she's going to go to one side on the inhale, hip rotates over. Now the oblique will pull her back, and then she comes to me, reaches across, and now that left oblique pulls back. We'll do one more per side. The breath is inhale over, exhale, contract, and then inhale over, exhale, contract. So that is our beginning way of showing it. I'm going to show it a little bit harder. If that right there felt like, oh, I'm not really sure yet where my body should be, stick with that version for a while and then go ahead and progress. She's going to come one leg, then the other to tabletop. And so goal again is not to allow the back to arch. She's going to rock her knees to me. This hip comes up towards me. Okay. Now she's going to pull me back to center using that left oblique. She pulls, contracts down. Now we go the other way. Inhale over. Exhale, contract to center, deepen. Inhale, reach across, ribs draw in. Hip is lifting up right there, and then abs pull back. Inhale, reach across, knees try to stay even with each other, and then exhale, rest. Good. So you can see this is a lot more body parts that we're working with. Other ways you can modify that to go from toes up to tabletop. She could have rested her feet on top of a big ball and moved the ball back and forth. That would be a progression. This next exercise we're going to go into is called the 100 prep. So a lot of you have heard what the 100 is. It's classic Pilates move. This would be a preparatory exercise before you would get into that one. So she's going to bring her arms to the ceiling. Palms are going to turn to face her thighs. So on this, we learned protraction, retraction. She's going to let her shoulders come up. They protract. That's not where we want them. And then she pulls them down and retracts. So retraction is where they're into the groove. They're where they should be. She'll then bring a leg to tabletop and then another leg to tabletop. Okay, you can do this with the feet down. So if it's too much, just keep your feet on the floor. Ribs and core are stable. On the exhale, she'll curl up. Arms come to the hips. She finds where her shoulders and neck belong, and then inhale, she'll come back down, arms to ceiling. First stabilize, then she exhales and comes up, and inhale, come back down. So different than some of the other ones, we're not pausing, we're constantly moving, exhaling, and inhale. So be aware as she gets up here, you can see her shoulder to her fingertip is one line. And then she comes back down. The legs have not moved, right? They're stable, and we've got this lovely table again. And back down. One more like this. We're working core and lats, which are our back muscles. And rest. Go ahead and pull your knees into your chest. I'm going to give her a little break. Okay, another exercise that is a really hard one for most is called the roll-up. So I'm going to show how to progress this. She's going to start seated with her knees bent, feet flat on the floor. She'll grab behind her thighs, And in this position, she's going to start really lifting tall. Now, the roll down comes from her lumbar spine, which is your low back. All she's going to do is tilt it like she's rocking back on her tip past her sits bones, and then she's going to round back up and lift tall. So she's tilting back, going past them, relaxing the shoulders, and then coming back up. Now I'm going to let her have a little more freedom. She's going to come to where her arms become straight. Right to there, hold, and I want her to bring her head back just a little bit, and you can see our tendency again is to use the neck. She'll roll back up and then lift tall. So during the class, if we're doing the full one and this is where we start, you'd go halfway down and pause, good, fix, and round and lift it up. Now I can progress her and just say, go ahead and hover your arms, and she'll go halfway down to about where her chin and knee are the same level, and then she's rounding it back. And then going halfway down, scooping the stomach, drawing the chin back, and then rolling it back up. All right, so she's going to come all the way down this time. The true roll-up is done with the legs straight. So if you have any back issues, disc issues, this could be contraindicated, then maybe do that modified version. Legs are going to go out. She's going to reach her arms back, palms facing one another. Now, the tendency when we do that, I'm going to have her do it bad, is to pop her ribs way up in the air like this. You can see I can fit my hand under her. That's no good. She's going to stabilize her rib cage, and her palms are facing in. Inner thighs are glued together. What starts the movement is her arms. They come over her shoulders. Then she lifts her head and chest, and she's going to pause right here where her arms are shoulder height. Exhale, she continues rolling into a slight C curve right here. So in this position, my goal is to get her where her shoulders are directly over her hips, and her head is going to come to me a little bit, so she finds that position there, and that way we feel that nice C curve. From here, she'll inhale. Exhale, she's going to roll back down, C curve to the bottom. Once she's down there, ribs stabilize, arms reach back. So arms will go first, head, chest, neck, she pauses, then exhale deep into the top. Little bit of a C curve forward. She's going to stay in that C curve and just go back down, exhale. So hard part on this is neck position, making sure our neck doesn't lead the way. Arms go first, head, chest, exhale, deepen. Her arms are always the level of her shoulders. We can see that. And then her abs draw back to pull her slowly back down into the floor. This is an abdominal exercise. And again, if you feel like it's bothering your low back, then you can start with that prep instead. Exhale, core muscles pull in. She's going to hollow her abdominals right here. And then exhale, roll it back down with control and rest. That's called the roll up. We're going to go into leg circles. So we're going to start with a modified version. She's going to bend her knees just slightly. Okay, from here again, this is all about stability, this exercise. I'm going to teach how do I move my leg while keeping my torso again stable, which is many of the exercises in Pilates is we use the term disassociation. I'm disassociating my leg from the other parts of my body. So that's a key factor in Pilates is how do we get something to work without everything to jumping in. So on this, right leg is going to come straight up in the air. Her job is to make the leg swivel within the hip socket and not have everything dancing around. Top foot flexes, we do that so that we get this nice stretch. And then we think about there's a seat belt across her pelvis. That seat belt's keeping her from moving. From here, she's going to make this small circle. We go down the midline. She makes a small circle on the ceiling and then comes right back to center. So it's like a basketball outlining it on the ceiling. She'll go down, around, and pause. Down, so it's not huge, around, contract, and pause. So again, what's working here, she's obviously working her quad and her hip flexor. She's also working her core to be able to stabilize the whole body. We really work towards tightening the quadricep and keeping the pelvis still. So we're not coming too close to our face where our bottom lifts up, and we're not going too low to where we arch. She can go the other direction. Now she'll open, around, and pause at the top. Open, around, and pause. Open, around, and pause. So you can do these exercises with us and you'll hear these cues. And breath pattern, she's going to do an inhale on one circle. And now she'll exhale on the next circle. Okay, so one breath is an inhale. She's pausing each time. And then exhale. Good. Pull the knee into the chest. And then she'll bring that foot down. Other leg's going to go straight up to the ceiling. And I'm going to find where her pelvis is totally grounded, her tailbone's grounded, and her foot is flexed. She finds that the ribs are down. She goes down first. Inhale, up, exhale, and up. So the hard part is every time the leg moves away from you, that's where my core has to really kick in. That's where my back is going to want to arch. So this is where the work is, as the leg goes down, around, and pause, down, around, and pause. And you can see that everything else is really stable. If she wanted to make this harder, she could straighten her bottom leg out so it's fully down. Now, again, I would suggest work up towards that because you want to see that. You can see, go the other direction. You can see she can keep that leg flat. For those of us that are too tight, I would stay with the bent version. If you feel you start to arch your back, then you need to stay with the modified version. Really key is progressing when your body is ready. 3 more like this. She's going to go down, around, and pause. The leg swivels within the hip socket, and she'll do 1 more like this, down, around, and I'll have you bring your knees in. So this is an exercise, again, for just teaching the body how to move the leg in a bigger manner. Next exercise is called spine stretch. She's going to come to a seated position. And the best part about having the machine here, you won't have this, but she's going to get to put her feet against here, which is really great feedback. If you have a wall, I would suggest putting your feet up against a wall to learn this because she's going to see if she's cheating or not. So arms are going to come in front of her, shoulder width apart. What I want her to imagine is that her back is up against an imaginary wall. So her head, her shoulders, and her hips are all one unit. Our job is to peel off the wall segment by segment. So she's going to start with her chin nodding down, her upper back moving forward, then through the thoracic spine here, all the way to the point of where we don't lose the waist. The waist stays against the wall. I'm going to have her bring her head to me just a little bit, right to there. She's going to pause here, and then she's going to restack up against that wall. Dun, dun, dun. And you can see it's segmenting, segment by segment. She didn't bring her head first, and she didn't just pop up. So it's really meant, how do I move my vertebrae on their own? So head goes first. She flexes forward from the chest. The ribs press back, and the hard part is the neck position. I know for everyone, it's like, where is my head in space? We have to kind of mess around with that a little. She's going to pause here. Another aspect is the hamstring stretch. So I'm going to have her pull her toes away from the bar. Now she's getting those hamstrings and Achilles. She's then going to restack back up, vertebrae by vertebrae, all the way up to the top. So those of you that are struggling just to sit here right now, that sitting upright is a hard transaction for both of us. I'm going to have you sit up on top of something. So that might be a towel. That might be a bolster. I'm going to give her a little booster seat here. And what this does is for those of us that have tight hamstrings, it allows it to be like, oh, I can sit perfectly tall now. So if you feel like your back is not straight when you start, you need to pop yourself up with some folded towels. Now she's going to do the same exercise, and it's going to feel really great. Head's going to go first. She flexes her feet back, and she maintains her low back where it's at. Head's going to come up just a smidge, good. And she'll restack up to the top, vertebrae by vertebrae by vertebrae. So again, I urge you to practice this up against a wall. You'll get that feeling of peeling off the wall and peeling back into it. And then also try reversing it by putting your feet against the wall. So you can get that feeling of, is one leg pulling away? And then she's going to come back up and lift up tall. Great job. I'm going to take her little booster seat away. Next one's called rolling like a ball. So really, it looks like a fun exercise, but it's not. It's meant to be abdominals, but it kind of brings back our childlike behavior. I'm going to show it to you bad and then show it to you good. So she's going to hold her ankles. One hand gets each ankle, and she's going to point her toes and balance. Eye gazes to the knees, and I'm just going to let her roll with no cue. She's going to roll back and roll up. Kind of fun. It looks like we're rolling around. She's rolling back and rolling back up. So lots can go wrong on this. She's having fun here, boom, and rest. So things that we look for, the feet start to pump us to create momentum. The head starts to fling back to create momentum. And we're not sure what we're working. We might lock out our hands. So my test for this, and she's not gonna like this test, she's gonna put her elbows below her knees. So right here is the elbow, and hands to forehead. What this does is create a ball shape for me, right? She's gonna then hover her feet. Now, goal here for her is going to be to keep this connection, that her elbow needs to stay here as she rolls back and forth. It's hard, as you can see, so it kind of changes the exercise. So she's going to use her abs, pull back on the inhale, exhale, balance. Good. She's starting to feel where that pull is. Inhale back, exhale, balance. So way harder than flinging back and forth. So that is the whole point of this exercise. It's meant to be, can I stabilize now myself in a ball and move around while keeping my core working? Yeah, once you do it a few times, you start to feel, oh, this is where the work is coming from. Now I'm going to have her grab her ankles and try to recreate that. So she's going to imagine holding that and balance. One more. Inhale back, exhale, rest. So you can kind of play around with that. There's a lot of ways that I like to just kind of see if we're cheating or not. That's one of them. That's my call out moment. So test yourself at home. That's one way to see if you're doing it. And again, if you have a disc issue and it's contraindicated, that would not be an exercise. All you would do is balance and hold with the feet off while we roll back and forth. You'd stabilize and hold yourself. Next exercise is called side lift. She's going to lay on her side, her bottom palm up, legs straight and long. All right. So what we look for on this exercise, the reason the bottom arm is facing the ceiling is that it causes her not to help. So anytime that bottom arm is up and not pushed down, we're really trying to, first off, get the shoulder to rotate. Second off, we don't want other things to be working. We are imagining that we are between two planes of glass. So I don't want my body leaning forward or leaning back. I'm right between it. And I'm going to have a couple checklists. So I'm looking for, are her feet the same length? So they need to stay the same length. Are her hips north to south, or is one like this really hiked up? So we want them straight. And the shoulders the same thing. They should be straight on top of each other. Head is going to look straight ahead. And her arm is going to be super snug up against her. And all that arm is there for not to push and help, but to let her know, am I leaning forward or back? Okay? Once she hits this point, her feet will slightly come in front of her body and she'll tuck her low back under. This one we bias towards a flat back. So again, if there was a wall here, I'd think I need to push my torso up against it so I don't arch. Muscle focus is obliques, which are our waist muscles. She's going to level both legs up. Pause here, squeeze the inner thighs as tight as she can, and then she's going to skim the floor and come down. She's exhaling on the up, inhaling on the down. Ribs pull in, abs pull in, and lower. So the hard part is not using the arm, not pressing. It's a lot of work of the inner thigh and the torso muscles. Avoid leaning forward or leaning back. So you want to keep those hips north to south at all times. Modification I'll show here. She's just going to lift her top leg up only. She'll bring her bottom leg to meet it and then lower everything down. So she'll find hip height, and lower down. One more, hip, and rest. I'm going to have you just stay facing that direction. Just flip around the other way so you can see. So bring your head down at that end and stay facing. Perfect. So on this one again, goal is waist muscles. I'm going to have her kind of go through this checklist quickly. She's doing ankles stacked, hips stacked, shoulder stack, and her head's looking straight forward. Once she's there, she'll slide her feet forward and tuck her low back under. So she creates this length. Arm is snug. Inhale is the breath. Exhale, we lift up. Inhale, she lowers. Squeeze the inner thighs. Exhale, lift. Inhale on the lower, shoulders are going to slide down. Exhale up. Inhale as she lowers, contracting the core and lifting. Inhale down and exhale, rest. Nice job. She'll come to all fours now. Hands are going to go underneath the shoulders, knees under the hips, where you're truly hip width apart, shoulder width apart. So we work in what is called neutral in all fours, and I talked about this in our foundation. We're bringing it now to an exercise. So remember we talked about headlights. Headlights point straight down. They don't tuck and roll, and they don't arch and tip. So her headlights are straight down to the floor. If I put my hand like this, we've got this nice long line with her rib cage up against it, and her head is going to come find me. Okay, so now her head's in line. So in this position, I'm going to have her extend her right leg behind her, stretch it out long. Yep, and we see now her hips are going to find where stable is. Okay, so if I put my hand across here, she's flat, she's not tipped. She's then going to lift her leg up without moving anything in the glute and tap back down. So you only lift to where your back does not move. So remember the word disassociation? This would be it. We can move from the socket, lifting our leg up and tapping it down. How we don't do it, I'll let her show it. She's going to lift really high, and you can see that glute flare up and her back dip down. So when she lifts too high, we start to lose the back. She dips, creates this goalie, and then her pelvis goes into an arch. And bring the knee in, back to neutral. So I find that neutral, hip bones facing down, head is going to come up to be in line, and her shoulders are stable. First pull your abs in, then she slides that other leg out, finds where she's square, and then she's going to lift without movement in the whole back. What lifts the leg is the hamstring. So she's really working right through here. That's what's pulling her up and tapping her back down. She's exhaling on the lift, inhaling as we come back down. Exhale, and keeping everything square. And everybody has a tendency to have one good side. So when we start moving to these, you'll see what your dominant side is. One's harder to stabilize. Bend it in and rest. Okay, so that's the beginning of how we learn how do we lift our legs up behind us when we're either laying flat or in all fours. A little tiring? Okay. She's then going to come down onto her tummy, and her hands are going to come into her side. We're going to go into what's called a basic back. Go ahead and come like this, high five. Basic back extension. So what she really wants to do is go like this. This is the most comfortable position in the world, is to roll your shoulders in and not have them in good posture. So we typically are like this during the day. We want to roll them full. Proper position of the shoulder is where we're like this, and they're flat across, which would make our arms have to turn to face into our body. So I start by finding where the shoulders belong, which is broad here, and her hands snug. Right there, that is an exercise. You're going to feel like this is work. So the scapula here, which are your wings, are slightly drawing together, and her arms are as straight as she can. We're going to inhale and lift from the head first. She'll come up, then her chest comes up just about to here. Then she's going to reverse chest, shoulders, and then head. So not a lot of neck movement. She's coming up slowly, stretching the arms towards the feet, chin down just a little bit, and then lower. So this is another one where we're not sure the neck and space. What I see a lot, go ahead and look forward, is this. And you can see how her neck is flared forward, and then she comes back down. So how I like to cue it in class is I pretend there's a fishing pole or a fishing hook hanging from my nose, and it's going down into the water. We want it to go straight down when we get up there. So when she gets up there, her nose should be directly pointed straight down into the water, not forward or back, and lower down. And that way we know where our head is in space. Inhale on the up. She's going to really open the shoulders and stretch the elbows and lock them, and lower back down on the exhale. Now, a couple things come up. People say, should my legs be together, apart? Way harder to keep them together. Then we're adding more muscles, right? We're adding inner thighs, the glutes kick in a little bit more, and it's not natural to want to have that feeling. It's a lot easier to sprawl out. If you do not have a back injury, a back condition, draw the legs together because we're going to work more muscles, and I'm all about get more. If you do, go with your feet into a wide V. If I have her go super wide, right about like that, turn her palms in, and she goes into back extension, a lot more comfortable on your sacrum. She's not going to feel as much work in here, and lower back down. And it's a lot easier just to work into the upper back extensors. Inhale as you come up. Exhale as she comes down, and I'll have her draw her legs together one more time so you can see the difference. You're going to see this is a lot more work. Straight arms, good. And lower back down. She's going to sit into what we call child's pose or rest position in Pilates. Rest position in Pilates is like child's pose. Goal is hips go all the way to heels. Forehead tries to reach for the mat and your hands are out long. We are wanting to stretch the back muscles. So we always put this at the end of our workout so we get this nice length into here and we can get a little bit of a stretch through the back. Hope you enjoyed the workout. See you next time.